Where do our students fail? In the very beginning, they fail because they don't put enough specific details in their answer. They put a bunch of fluff. If you tell me, hey, you've got to write 6 sentences, they may write 6 sentences, but that's just not great. It's very flimsy, okay? So if you teach them to plan with bullets, they pull in that brainstorm, they put things in that plan, then they can decide what fits and what doesn't fit. Do they have enough? Do they get specific enough? They have strong examples, whatever you're working on in that mode of writing. You can cross out anything you don't need, add things you need to have in there to make it fuller. Then with bullets, you can teach them in the beginning to go through and number those bullets, find out which idea needs to be your first sentence. And then what's the second one? So you're teaching them how do you hook that together to bring those sequential order skills from kindergarten and first grade into their writing. So then if they take that sequential numbered list of bullets and pull that into how they write their sentences, you're immediately building organization and sentence fluency, and you're building confidence in that young writer. And I've seen this with children who, extremely learning disabled, who needed that step, as well as right in the middle and gifted students. They follow that plan. They feel confident. They don't feel frustrated, okay? And then we write. We take that concept from the writing and we say, okay, let's build a basic primary sentence, okay? Something very basic. What do I want to say, okay? And then you've got to ask yourself, is this the way I talk? Do I have too much of kind of my environment in this? Is this formal or informal writing? Will anyone reading this understand me? Okay, so is it pretty basic? Then I take that sentence and I stretch it. And I'm going to put in stronger vocabulary, word choice, bringing in our 6 traits of writing, shouldn't we? Okay, and then we enhance this. Is every sentence we write a simple sentence? Is it? Or do I have a variety of sentences? Are there some sentences that need to be combined to be a compound sentence? Or is there an opportunity for a complex sentence? Okay, so we're teaching those mechanics along the way in making choices we write, okay? We build our paragraph and then revise content. So here's a step that it's really funny when I get a chance to travel around the country and talk to schools. It's like the red pen pops up immediately and everyone's going after grammar, punctuation, and spelling. I'm like, hold your horses. You've got to revise the content first. I'm not saying grammar, punctuation, and spelling aren't important. They are extremely important. But what's frustrating to a child of any age? If you go through and correct the grammar, punctuation, and spelling, then you go back and say, well, you really don't have a strong enough paragraph to start with. This doesn't really fit. And they're like, what are you doing? I just fixed this. See, you need to revise the content first, make sure the content is strong. And then the next step is edit for punctuation, grammar, and spelling. And so that's the writing process. That's what I call the Tier 1 process. It's what we use in our everyday, daily writing. Tier 2 is when you're going to take a piece of writing through those multiple drafts. You're going to dig deeper for that revision of content to make sure you have everything you need and to polish out the word choice and the sentence variety and the structure and all that. You dig in more to those mechanics of writing and you just enhance everything. A Tier 3 piece of writing is something initiated by the student. That's when magic's happening. When that 5th grader of yours says, I want to write a book. I want to write a novella. I've got a great idea. This short story I did for you, I see this as a whole book. I'm going to write like a 50-page book. Okay, go for it. It's when that child says, I want to do this, because that child's going to bring their Tier 1 and their Tier 2 skills in to create something. And it may not be a novel. It could be a PowerPoint or keynote presentation. They may want to film a little documentary. We all have these wonderful devices now, iPads and phones and things that have incredible cameras. They can actually now edit on their phone or in their iPad. So why not let them? Does presentations have to always be just paper and pencil? Could your book report be all new with technology, which helps you with your standards and everything you're doing? So it all comes back, though, to writing. And you can ask them to have a plan, have everything they need, to build that documentary or that PowerPoint presentation to show all those levels of skills. Okay, so right now I want to stop for a moment and see if any of you have any questions. We're about to move now into our actual lesson. I'm going to walk you through an example of the writing process in argumentative in a content area. So I want to pause just for a moment and take any questions that you may have about what we've talked about so far. And then I want to get you involved. So be prepared. This next step that we're going to do, you're my students. So we're going to jump in. I'm going to read this with you and do this with you. You're going to have to interview me in a moment, and we're going to write an answer to an open-ended question using this opinion, argumentative, persuasive style of writing. Thank you, Catherine. Anyone else have a question? All right, I'm going to keep watching my little question board here. We will save a few moments at the end to let folks ask questions, and I certainly don't want to hold anyone past our hour we kind of designated here. All right, so here's an example that could pop up on a source writing. You know, we're all working on source comparative text writing where you may have multiple sources, whether it be passages or audio or video that the children have access to, and they have to answer a question. And they've got to really pull evidence. But see, I think it's far more than just evidence. I think it's really more of you've read this, you've experienced this, it's checking your knowledge, your understanding, and how you can kind of do some reasoning skills to reach a conclusion. So here we go. When students study the life of Helen Keller, they often ask, how is she able to speak the words wah wah when she had the miracle at the pump with Annie Sullivan? Using the passage below, state your opinion as to how she was able to accomplish this. Be sure to cite any evidence you discover. Okay, so this might be found in language arts. This could be found in social studies. It could even be found in science. Why? Well, this goes back to something to the human body and blindness and deafness. So these are 3 content areas that this particular lesson could be in. It could be pulled from. All right, here we go. So I'm going to move out of our presentation here and go to our source that we're going to use. Now, just as it happens to have, I did do a biography called Helen Keller, Leader Without Sight or Sound. I am also, and I did this because, you know, when you're doing a presentation like this, everything in the world is copyrighted. So I have to use material that I have the rights to. So that's why we pulled on Helen Keller today. I'm also, when I'm not writing and teaching writing, I'm a stage director. And I actually direct the Miracle Worker play at Helen Keller's birthplace in Tuscumbia, Alabama. So every summer for the past 55 years, they have put on the Miracle Worker on the grounds where it all took place. For the past 18 years, I've been their director, and I had the privilege of getting to know William Gibson, who wrote the play, and Arthur Penn, who directed the play originally in New York on Broadway, as well as the movie. So I've become quite the Helen Keller expert, you may say. So I'll be the subject of your interview today that you'll get to ask me questions. So we're going to have an interview and we're going to have a written source. That's 2 really good sources for us to pull from today. So I'm going to read this to you. I know you can read this from your screen, but I also want to kind of throw in a little hint of what's coming in January. I'm going to do another session like this on a close reading strategy that I developed called RIP, Read, Interpret, Predict. And we have just seen outstanding increases in reading comprehension from the data from schools that are telling us about this. So it teaches kids to read with expression, to follow punctuation, to read fluently, to stop and interpret and ask questions and make predictions. So what we're going to do, I'm going to read a portion and we're going to stop. I'm going to let you kind of experience that a little bit, give you a little heads up to what's coming in January, and maybe you'll come back and join us with that too. From Helen Keller, Leader Without Sight or Sound by Darren J. Butler. On Helen's first birthday, she took her first step. Kate had just finished bathing her when the toddler slipped from her hands and ran towards the flickering shadows of leaves dancing on the floor. As the summer days faded into fall, the young Helen mastered her first words, tea and wawa, which of course meant water. She was a happy, intelligent child with the world at her fingertips. But as the cold winter chill of February approached, a cloud of darkness fell upon Ivy Green. Aunt Eb quietly knitted in the parlor of the main house. Next door in the little house, Kate Keller stood horror-struck beside Helen's crib. "Captain! Captain!" Kate screamed. She clutched Helen in her arms. Rushing into the little house, he found Kate standing by Helen's crib, shaking and frantic. "What's wrong?" It's Helen, she cried. She's burning up. Fetch the doctor. Kate put Helen back into her cradle. She poured cool water into a basin and soaked a cloth in it. Tenderly, she bathed the young girl's forehead and sang a lullaby to quiet her. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's going to buy you a mockingbird. As she sang, tears streamed down her cheeks. The cold February wind howled outside, and Kate watched eagerly for any sign of the doctor. After what seemed like an eternity, she heard the horse hoofs approaching. Kate ran to the door and hurried the doctor inside. I've been bathing her with cold water, but nothing I do seems to help. The fever won't go away. The doctor opened his black bag and started his examination. A fever's a dangerous thing, Mrs. Keller. Is it scarlet fever? Captain Keller asked. Hard to say, the doctor replied. He sniffed Helen's mouth. What are you doing? Kate asked. In cases of scarlet fever, the patient uses a sweet smell about their breath, he sighed. I don't detect that with Helen. Then what is it? Kate demanded. The doctor placed his hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Keller, I think you need to prepare yourself. Looks like acute congestion of the stomach and brain. Well, what can we do for that? Captain Keller asked impatiently. With a grim expression, the doctor replied, I'm afraid there is nothing to be done. The child will most likely die. Now, I'm going to stop and interpret here. So the question I'm asking is, wait a minute. So Helen Keller wasn't born blind and deaf. She was just like everyone else. And her first words were tea and wah-wah. Okay, so there's that wah-wah from my question. Okay, so that means she was already talking and speaking before she lost her sight and her hearing. Okay, that's important information to know. So I get the impression that they really thought she was going to die. The doctor says she's going to die, but wait, prediction-wise, I predict she's going to live because we know the history. Helen Keller lived to be in her 80s, and she's very famous. So she didn't die when she was a child. So what happened? Well, I'm guessing that this fever is what led to her losing her hearing and her sight. Let's see if I'm right. So that's the RIP process. So it takes about 30 seconds every time you stop. But as you model that with your students, whether they're kindergartners or they're 8th graders or if they're 12th graders, you will see their level of reading comprehension deepen. Why? Well, we tend to have a little bit of a misconception about reading comprehension. Typically, people think, and I was listening to this from the ILA president, said, we all think that just reading a text and answering questions is reading comprehension. Well, it is to a point, but we have to teach that process, that reading expression, that not reading through punctuation. In other words, don't read like a jackrabbit so that you don't observe the periods and you run things together that lead to confusion. That expression, interpreting, but also that predicting as well. We read the next portion. Devastated, Kate and Captain Keller tried not to lose hope. Kate continued to apply cold washcloths to Helen's head and body. Around the clock, Kate tirelessly tended to Helen, not allowing her out of her sight for a second. And as quickly as the fever came, it suddenly vanished. Even the doctor could not believe his eyes. I have to tell you, folks, I've never seen anything like it. A miracle, that's what it is. Simply a miracle. While Kate bathed Helen the next morning, she made a startling discovery. Her hand accidentally passed in front of the child's face, but Helen's eyelids didn't close. Kate snapped her fingers in front of Helen's face. No response. She clapped her hands rapidly, inches from Helen's eyes. The baby didn't blink or move. Her expressionless face sent a chill down Kate's spine. Captain, she shrieked. Trembling, she clutched the frame of the cradle. No, no, please, God, no. Captain Keller rushed into the little house. What is it? Kate tried to speak, but the words were trapped in her throat. She pointed to Helen. Kate, the captain questioned. She's fine. Helen's going to be fine. The doctor, eyes, she mumbled. She can't see. Instead of questioning her, Captain Keller waved his hands in front of Helen's face. No eye movement. The Kellers hurried Helen to an eye doctor in Union City, Tennessee. It was there that they learned Helen was blind. Heartbroken, they returned to Ivy Green, only to make another shocking discovery. Just before dinner, Helen was playing in the parlor near her crib. In the next room, the Keller's servant, Viney, rushed to make sure the table was properly set. Satisfied that everything was ready, she rang the dinner bell. The family made their way into the dining room to take their seats, but Helen did not come. Alarmed, Kate rang the bell again. Helen did not stir. Captain Keller and Kate rattled tin cans near her, but she did not react. They spoke to her gently, but Helen did not turn her head. Helen Keller had slipped into a world of darkness and silence. All right, so that could be a piece that we have there for a source. We can interpret that now and say, all right, the fever is what led to her blindness and her deafness. From a science point of view, why? Could I go do some research? And can I go and Google that and find out how a fever can take away someone's sight and their hearing? Especially back in a time in the late 1880s when we didn't have the medicines we have today. Was this really scarlet fever? Was it something else? What do we believe it was? So if I want to go the science route, I can find all that. Yet we know that something amazing just happened. If you're in social studies, you could definitely have the discussion about how this moment in history changed the world right here. Because Helen Keller, we know, will go on to be an inspiration to billions of people across the planet. She will become the first lady of courage of the world. It's a universal person. And I witnessed that. We have people who come from all over the world, literally all over the world, to watch the play and tour her home. It's just amazing. All right, so now let's go with the writing process with the purpose of what are we doing? We are stating our opinion. Well, there it is, right there. So we know there's our keyword. We know from the very beginning, we're not writing a story. We're not describing something. We're not even explaining to the art of explaining just to explain. We've got to state an opinion. Here's what we think. Here's what we deduce. And then back it up with explaining through facts and evidence. Now, understand, what are the keyword or keywords that point you toward the mode of writing to be used? What is expected of you in this written response? That's the conversation you have to help your children understand. We point out here, it's opinion. There it is. I'm going to underline it and bold it. There is our keyword, okay? We know what we're doing. What's expected of me? So I can go look at the space, okay? The space I have to write in, I've got a pretty generous space here. I always tell students, do you have a box? Do you have 2 pages? Is it asking you to write an essay or write a paragraph or 2? So today, for what we're doing in our webinar, we're going to stick to just a single paragraph, but that'll be all right. Just kind of get us started so you can see the concept of this.